Hey, most B2B firms think that a paid ad funnel is a straight line where the prospect clicks on an ad, fills out a form, and then gets put into your CRM for you or a setter to call. But this is why most B2B firms also commonly believe that paid ads don't work for B2B services. And I get it, because there's literally nothing out there besides this basic common knowledge about paid ads. It's literally what every ads agency does for B2B companies. But unfortunately, it's also why you, the viewer, as well as other B2B founders you probably know of, have had poor experiences with paid ads. So in this video, I'm going to provide some insider knowledge about ad strategies specifically for B2B firms and what's actually working for B2B advertising right now in 2026 so that you can learn how to create and run your own ad funnel for your B2B company. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dylan Wart, founder of Margin Maxing. We build and run paid ad funnels specifically for B2B companies where we come in, we build out the entire system from the ads to the back-end sequences so that you can get consistent qualified calls and scale your ad spend profitably. All right, so in this video, we're going to be talking about firstly, what an ad funnel is. Secondly, the two main types of ad funnels for B2B services. Then we're going to talk about how to know which funnel is right for you in your specific situation. We're going to go over the different types of ads, and then we're going to talk about how to set and scale ad budget so that you're not spending too much money or too little money. So basically what a funnel is taking your ICP who doesn't know you, who doesn't trust you, and ultimately turning them into someone who likes and trusts you. And how do we do that? So we do this through a well-made funnel. How good your funnel is determined by how fast you can get your ICP from here to here. So in other words, an ineffective funnel is basically when you have people who come out of your funnel at the back end, not knowing you, not trusting you, and ultimately not buying from you. Because ultimately, if they like and trust you, they're going to buy. So basically, there's two main types of funnels. There are direct response funnels, and there are content first funnels. Now, the direct response funnel is the typical funnel that we've gone over before in a previous video, where it's basically the ad goes to the landing page with the video sales letter on it right here. And then there's a button that takes you to fill out a type form, and then also integrates Calendly where you can choose spots. And obviously all of this is on the page. And then you get taken to a confirmation page with frequently asked questions on it. And then you enter the different sequences, which include the email sequences, the content retargeting, and then the manual outreach. So the thing about the direct response funnel is this funnel is the most common funnel that we do for all of our clients. And the main difference between the direct response funnel and the content first funnel is that the fact is all of this is the same. It's still used in the content first funnel. So you have this direct funnel, right? It's the same thing. But the difference is you have an ad going to this, but before they reach the ad, there's another step. And that step is content. So the idea here is before you hit them with your direct response ad that basically just gives your offer up front, you want to have them consume content first, because this builds trust before you pitch them your offer. And once they've gone through your content, then do they go to your ad and then to the rest of your funnel. And this dynamic here is referred to as something called framing. So framing basically means how someone reacts to a concept based on how it's presented to them. So what this means is before someone takes a look at your direct offer, before you're pitching something that costs money, if you have a step before that where you're able to properly frame them, meaning give them the proper context and warming up before you do pitch them that offer, they're going to be more bought in, they're going to be more trusting and more excited to onboard with you and talk next steps and go through your funnel. So think of it like this. If you've ever had someone consume your content, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, if you have an inbound lead coming organically, they're way more easier to close than a cold lead coming in inbound from ads. And this is because they were properly framed before they even were exposed to your direct offer. More specifically, they already know who you are, how you talk, how you look. They've already put a face to the name. Basically, they just understand and trust you and your brand way more than anyone who just came across an ad would. Because like, let's assume you had like 10 or 15 videos on YouTube, for example, and those videos were like 10 to 20 minutes each. Even if a prospect watches like 4 of those videos, not even all the way through, they've still watched like 1 hour of your content, right? Watching 1 hour of content versus 30 seconds of an ad before going into your sales process is extremely different. And this is because of something called the familiarity bias, which basically states that the more familiar you are with someone or with a brand, the more likely you're going to trust them and therefore buy. It means they have more of their guard down when they do actually talk to you. The other thing is someone who's already watched an hour of your content is already at least partially bought into your service, right? If someone didn't believe in what you do at all, they would stop watching after they watched the first video, right? So someone who's watched like an hour to 90 minutes of your content is a way warmer lead, not just because of the familiarity bias, but also because it shows that they are open to you and your service. So basically the goal of the content first strategy is to recreate the exact same effect of consuming organic content, but just in your ads instead of having to rely on organic content. And there's a few reasons why we do this. Firstly, it's because of what I mentioned before. Content makes people buy into you and your brand, which means they're already receptive to you. Secondly, most B2B marketing is very saturated, and whatever service that you're selling, it probably sounds very similar to what a lot of other firms are selling as well. What content does is it separates you from the noise because now you have a face to the name. Now you're an actual person or an actual brand that they're spending time looking into. And that means that they buy into your brand and are framed in a way that any other random brand that says something similar would not have the same effect. And finally, the reason that this works is we can actually take the people who watch a certain part of these ads and react to these ads, and we can create a retargeting audience. So we can take this retargeting audience inside the ads manager on Meta and retarget them with more content as well as the ads. What this means is we can create entire campaigns that are only targeted at this audience who interacted with your content. Meaning instead of just running cold ads to everyone, you're only running ads to the people who first went through your content. And what this does is it's cheaper and more effective. It's cheaper because your audience pool is smaller and it's very targeted. And that's also why it makes it more effective, because they're only people who have interacted with your content. Now, the question is, where do you stand between having a direct response funnel or a content first funnel, or maybe an in-between, right? How do you know which funnel is right for you? Well, there's a very simple if-then string of questions that we can ask to find out what funnel is best for you. So firstly, do you have a good sales team? And what I mean by a good sales team is, do you have a good sales process? Do you have dedicated setters? Do you have a good sales culture? Meaning, is there urgency in your sales team? Is there an urgency to dial a lead as soon as they come in, right? Are your setters dialing and reacting to leads as fast as possible? And this also means proactivity, right? Is your sales team proactive? Do you have a proactive culture? Are they following up? Are they instigating conversations with the prospects, et cetera, et cetera? Now, most B2B firms do not have a quote unquote good sales team. And what I mean by a good sales team is they don't have dedicated setters, so they might just have a closer. And a closer is good, like they can close 20 to 25% of the time, but it's usually just one person, and there's usually no effort before the actual closing call. Meaning there's no setters following up proactively, dialing immediately, et cetera, et cetera. So if you do have a good sales culture, then you should do what's called an instant lead form funnel. Actually, this is an instant lead form to VSL funnel, and I'm going to tell you the distinction right now. So an instant lead form to VSL funnel begins by looking like the traditional funnel that most B2B firms do, which is you have your ad and then you have an in-platform lead form. So on Meta, there's a lead form that you can put on the actual platform. Other platforms have this as well. But basically, the idea is that you're not taking anyone off of Meta or off of the ad platform, right? They click on the ad and then there's a pop-up within that platform. And that form usually begins by 1 to 2 qualifying questions. And these are very direct qualifying questions, because if you have us making your ads, for example, your ads should be kind of like a mini VSL. By mini VSL, I mean these are video ads that are informative, educational, and not just saying, hey, buy this, right? So they have some education, and that way they can have very direct qualification questions. And a direct qualification question would be something like, the investment is, $10,000. Is this manageable by you? That would be one of the questions. Or you could give a range like 5,000 to 10,000, whatever. And then after they get qualified, there's a second step of the form, the same form, where you get, the information like their name, phone number, email. And once you get that, as you know, it gets sent to a CRM, and then a setter dials them and takes it from there. Now, the problem is, this is usually where firms stop. Most companies stop right here. They stop here and then they get, because they got the information and now the setter reaches out. But what you should actually be doing is continue this process to a VSL landing page. So this is what creates the instant lead form to VSL funnels, because we get their information from the lead form and then they are redirected to a VSL page that also has a self-book-in scheduler where they can choose a time themselves and therefore directly book a call with the closer, right? Now, the intention here is not to rely on the self-booking. The intention is actually to still manually book them in with the setter, just like as if none of this existed. But we're giving them the option and the possibility to watch the video sales letter to get more informed and educated on your offer, your service, who you are, how you solve it, the problems that your prospect has, etc., etc. So basically, in this funnel, one of 3 things is going to happen. Either 1, they fill out the form, don't watch the video, and then they get booked by the setter. Secondly, they fill out the form, they watch the video, they don't self-book, and then they still get booked by the setter. And thirdly, they fill out the form, they watch the video, and then they self-book in. So what this does is it kind of does 2 things simultaneously. It helps fill in the cracks with any prospect that fills out a form that's like not during work hours, because the main thing about this entire model is you have to call within 5 minutes. You have to be dialing immediately, and you have to be following up immediately. And that's why this type of funnel only works for companies that have a good sales team. So what this funnel does is it helps the process where for the leads that would normally fall through the cracks and you'd have to call them the next day because they filled out the funnel outside of working hours, they have the chance to watch the VSL, which means that they're more educated, so that when you do call them the next day, they know a little bit more about your product and service and how you solve their problems. But they also get a chance to just self-book in themselves, and then you wouldn't even need the setter to call them, right? And the second thing is, obviously, no matter what happens, whether the setter calls them immediately and books them in, they still have this chance to watch the VSL, read some more information, and just basically get more educated on your offer so that when they do show up to the closer, they are more informed and easier to close. But again, this is only open to people who have a good sales team. So for the companies so this is yes, and for no, if you don't have a good sales team, you want to do the content first ad funnel. Now, before we move on to the content first ad funnel, there's actually a second question that you need to ask. So if you don't have a good sales team, the second question you should ask is, do you have at least 10 to 15 pieces of content? And these pieces of content they need to be high quality, educational, and basically value-based content. This means like YouTube videos, Instagram content, even LinkedIn videos. If you have this type of content, then you can do the content first ad funnel. And if you don't, that's okay, because you can create 10 to 15 pieces of content and move right on over to the content first ad funnel. Now, quickly, if you don't have have any sort of content, obviously it takes some time to start building that out. So what we recommend you do is, and what we usually do for our clients who don't have 10 to 15 pieces of content ready and available, if you don't have this, you would just do the direct response funnel. And you would run this direct response funnel until you have created this content. But the direct response funnel is great to immediately start running because you're still going to get qualified leads. Again, I made a whole entire video on the direct response funnel and all the different sequences and different parts of it. You know, it is also content based, but there is no content before the actual ads. That's hence the name direct response, because you're basically calling people out directly with your ads. All the content is more so in the back end systems with the emails and the retargeting, etc. So if yes, you go to the content first ad funnel. So within the content first ad funnel, there are 2 buckets of content ads that we are going to create. So the first one, content bucket 1, is going to be your YouTube/social media content videos. So a good example of this would be our YouTube channel that we actively use in our sales process, where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 videos, and then we also can use for our content first ad funnel. So typically these are videos that are 10 to 20 minutes in length, where you go deep into the different mechanisms of your service. Again, these have to be very value dense and educational, basically informing the prospect about who you are, what you do, and why it works. So for the example of the YouTube videos, you would import them right into Meta. And what this does is you can get views, like 1 view can equal like 2 to 3 pennies. Like it's very, very cheap. And basically what we do is we run these typically at a budget of like $20 to $50 per day. And you run it for like 5 to 6 days. And after 5 to 6 days, you'll have enough people to create a custom audience. So content bucket 1 is cold, right? We're basically using content bucket 1 to find people who are interested. So what we do to create this audience right here is we create a filter on the ad platform for whoever has watched 25% or more of one of these videos. If they've watched 25% or more of one of these videos, they automatically get put into this audience category. And this audience becomes your warm audience because they've already gone through your first bucket of content. So this warm audience gets fed to content bucket 2. And content bucket 2 is more so-called selective content, right? It's more like interviews, case study breakdowns, testimonials, basically more selective content that is more about you as a brand and is more of second order type topics rather than just educating the prospect on what you even do. It's more so showcasing social proof and helping prove you as a brand versus other brands. And you have to remember that, okay, so when a prospect is coming through this funnel, right, they're getting hit with content ad 1, then they get hit with content ad 2, and simultaneously, they're also getting hit with your direct ads, the ads that are coming from your direct response funnel. This is where the direct response funnel comes in now. So now they've gone through these 2 buckets of content, and they're getting hit with your direct response ads that are taking them to, the landing page with the VSL where they can book a call. And once they book a call, guess what? They get hit with the email sequences, they get hit with the manual follow-up. They're still getting hit with the content from bucket 2. So do you see how they're getting bombarded in a good way? Because remember, all of this has to be very high value, very educational, very helpful. Again, I've said this in my past videos, but basically what we're doing with all this content, all these emails and everything is helping them make a decision as quickly as possible. So we're actually helping them so they can decide whether or not it's even a fit for them, and then they can move on if it's not, right? And then this helps you because by the time they go through this whole process, they're way, way more familiar with you as a brand and your service and how it can help them personally by the time they reach a closer. Compare the typical funnel that agencies run for B2B companies where they just have an ad. It's usually not even a video ad. And if it's a video ad, it's just a very generic one, goes to a lead form, goes to a CRM, and then they try to go to a closer to try to close them on the deal. There's no education, maybe a confirmation reminder, please show up to your call, that type of stuff. That's it. That's why it doesn't work. This is why ads don't work for you, straight up. So, and again, like I said before, if you don't have content, you don't have to wait. You shouldn't wait. You should immediately create a direct response funnel because, again, the direct response funnel works, and you're just going to have them go straight to your direct response ads, into the funnel, into the sequences where they can still get educated by the VSL. They're still educated by all the different sequences, and that gives you time to be creating content so that you can fill up these buckets and create your content first ad funnel. So we basically went over what an ad funnel is, the two main types of B2B ad funnels, how to know which one is right for you, the different types of ads within the content first ad funnel. And now let me go over briefly how to set and scale ad budget once you have campaigns set up. So once you have chosen a funnel and it's time to create a campaign, you will fall into one of two categories. One, you have a new account, you have a new ad account, or two, you have a seasoned ad account. A seasoned ad account means you've been running ads long enough to know what your average cost per call is. You have a good amount of data in terms of your lookalike audience, etc., etc. Most people will fall into the new ad account category. So for new ad accounts, usually one of two things happens. So either one, you spend too little, so you don't spend enough, and two, you spend too much on a campaign and let it run too long when you should have just cut it. So the question becomes, how do I know when to cut a campaign or scale it? Typically, if you're in situation one where you don't spend enough, you get high cost per results, you get low quality leads, and basically you just walk away thinking that, ads don't work. And the reason you think ads don't work is because you didn't give Meta enough data, aka money, because the more money you give Meta, the more data it can collect through the algorithm. It didn't have enough data to find who your ICP is and who responds to your ads. And on the other hand, you just end up wasting money. So if you don't know when to cut a campaign and shut it down and create a new one, you end up spending like 5 to 8K when you should have just stopped at 2K, right? In terms of ad spend. So in order to avoid these scenarios, we have to have guidelines for budgeting. So first you want to determine your profit, and typically it's the profit within 30 days of onboarding a new client. So this would be your revenue minus the cost it took to acquire the client minus your fulfillment. Like for example, maybe your offer is 20K, but after factoring in the cost that it took to acquire the client as well as fulfillment, it's only 7,500 that you actually take home, right? So this would be your profit. So typically what we do is once we figure out a client's actual profit, the rule becomes to run the campaign until it reaches a 1x their actual profit. Meaning in this case, in this scenario, $7,500, we would run the campaign until we have spent $7,500 on that campaign. Now, the second thing that you need to know besides profit is your target cost per call. So the target cost per call is typically factored in based on what break even would look like when running a campaign. So we have a whole process of calculating what the target cost per call would be. But typically, let's just say, it's $350, right? So $350 to acquire one qualified call, right? So let's make this a little bit easier to understand. So if your profit is $7,500, if your target cost per call is $350, the rule is run the campaign until spend equals 1x your profit. And then if you're booking calls within 1 to 2x your cost per call, your target cost per call, so in this case, that would be between $350 and $700 per call. Then let the campaign spend up to 2x your profit number. So in this case, it would be $15,000, right? Twice 7,500. And then once you've spent up to 2 times your profit and you still aren't booking calls within that 1 to 2x your cost per call, then you need to run what's called a bottleneck analysis, which is basically you want to look at your funnel because it's not necessarily the campaign's problem. It's usually a funnel issue. So you want to look at the messaging, you want to look at, all the different aspects of your direct response funnel or whatever funnel that you have set up. So this way you stop running the campaign as soon as you reach that number. Or if you reach that number and you're booking qualified calls, you know that you need to scale. This process helps you not underspend and also not overspend. Now, if you have a seasoned ad account, meaning you already have an average cost per call that you're familiar with, basically you would just do a target of 5x your average cost per call. So if your cost per call is $350, your ad spend would be $1750, right? So it's a little bit more straightforward. Now, when it comes to scaling, you need to understand a core aspect of how the algorithm works for paid ads. So the core understanding is that every action that we take in the ad account is signal for the algorithm. What this means is, for example, if you pull back on ad spend, that tells the algorithm something. It tells Meta that in the case of pulling back ad spend, that you're not seeing the results that you want. So what Meta will do is it actually changes the demographic bucket that it's currently showing your ads to. And then on the other hand, if you were to increase spend, it would continue honing in on whatever bucket of people that it's currently targeting, because you're telling it this is correct and this is working. Now, the problem with this is if you do this too abruptly, if you have an ad campaign that's working and you want to scale it, but you do it too fast, the algorithm doesn't really know how to react to that, and it will actually do the opposite. So scaling too fast usually results in higher cost per call and lower quality leads, just because it's too fast for the algorithm. So we have a process to scale gradually so that this doesn't happen. So basically what you want to do is just increase the budget every 3 days. Every 72 hours, we will increase the spend, 20 to 30%. And basically what happens is every 3 days we increase the spend. We look at it and see if the cost per call and quality of the leads goes up or down. If it goes down, then we'll kind of pull back a little bit on the spend and keep it steady until the quality comes back to normal. And if the quality goes back up, then we repeat again after 3 days. So you could go from, day one, you could be spending $100 per day on ads. But by day 28, if you're increasing 20 to 30% every single day, you could be spending, $500 per day. So this is quote unquote slow, but it's not really slow because we're still scaling exponentially. Because what this means is at the beginning of the month, we were spending about $3K per month on ads. But by the end of the month, we're spending like $8K per month on ads, right? And with this type of incremental increase, you can expect to start the month with one call every 1 to 2 days. Then you go to one call every day. Then you go to 1 to 2 calls every day. And by the end of the month, you're at 2 to 3 calls a day. And this happens just by scaling incrementally and analyzing the results. Now, every single campaign has something called a ceiling where, like, let's say instead of getting to $500 per day, you are at $450 and your cost per call was like $260. It was really good. And all of a sudden, as soon as you went up to 500, the cost per call went all the way up to like $700. And this happens, right? Because you have went past that ceiling. So the way that you know that you're at a ceiling is if cost per call goes way up and it stays, right, for a few days. It's not like, oh, one day it was 700 and then it went back. If it's been like 3 to 5 days and it's still really high, you have to go back to that $400 ad spend and see if it goes back down. And if the cost per call goes back down, that means that the campaign can't scale past that $450 per day. And that's completely normal because what you have now is what's called a foundational campaign. And a foundational campaign is basically a campaign that gets consistent calls but can't scale. So basically, the job of you or your media buyer or the agency that you're working with is to build an entire ad account that's full of these foundational campaigns. Because once you find out the ceiling of your campaign, what do? You create a new campaign. You let this one run and you create a new one and repeat the exact same process that I went through to find that one's ceiling. And what you do is now you have a full ad account full of foundational campaigns that are all bringing in consistent calls. So here's where we are. After this video, you now know that there are two fundamentally different ways to run paid acquisition for a B2B firm. You have the instant lead form into a VSL funnel type, which works if you have an amazing sales team with good culture and urgency. But for most of you who don't, you have the content first ad strategy, which is framing your audience through content, then hitting them with your offer and direct ads and funnel. And if you don't have any content, you just go straight to the direct funnel and start building your content if you want. You now also know how to set a testing budget that's tied to your actual profit rather than some arbitrary number, so that you stop killing campaigns too early or bleeding spend past the point of the useful data, or just wasting money on a campaign that's already failed. And you also know the scaling rule, which is the only way to grow ad spend without the algorithm punishing you for it. So basically, you can use all this information to build an ad funnel yourself. And if you haven't watched our in-depth breakdown of the direct response VSL funnel, the video should be here on the screen so you can check that one out. And also, if you're at the point where you'd rather just have this built out for you rather than trying to do it all on your own, there's also a link in the description to book a call where we'll walk through exactly how we'd build everything out done for you. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.